Welcome to The Problem, a Lockwood and Co podcast. I'm Caitlin.
I'm Alan.
And this week we're talking about the first two chapters of part 2 of The Empty Grave. Alan will have to say the name.
La Dame Sans Merci.
You forgot a word.
Did I?
Yeah, La Belle.
Oh, I did. Damn.
You didn't put it in the notes.
La Belle Dame Sans Merci. Well, because I was thinking like this is like a joke that's in the text. Do you know this?
No.
Yeah, so I think it's supposed to say something about the caliber of theater that we're dealing with, but I don't know that it's like, it's a good joke, but it's like, I think it would kind of fly over the heads of a teenage audience, maybe not. I don't know. But yeah, La Belle Dame means like the beautiful woman, you know, like dame, damsel. That's the same root word. That's where we get it from, is the French language and the English language. And Belle, of course, is beautiful, blah, blah, blah. And then sans means without, which is also like in English, it's without.
I'm so happy to be back in grade 3 French class. Yes.
Yeah, right. Merci, though, if you do know any basic French, you'd know that that means like thanks or thank you. It's like an informal form of thank you. Mm-hmm. But it sounds like our word of mercy, which is how they use it. And like mercy is like, you know, like grace or grâce is more how you'd say it, or like miséricorde if you wanted to use like the really formal word for mercy. But mercy, you know, merci is like thank you. It's like thanks. And so I think what he's kind of saying is like, this is not like, they don't speak French. They're using French as like a way to be more sophisticated than they really are. Kind of a, it's
especially
like a joke.
The original theater where that lady, because she got the name when she was alive.
Right. And it's like a low rent traveling circus kind of operation.
And like just to make sure we're sure, Jonathan Stroud just doesn't speak really bad French.
I don't think that's right. I think he knows that it's a little bit of a joke. Although I don't know, because the translation comes from Holly later, so I don't know. It's debatable.
Maybe Holly feels the same way I do about the French.
So
oh,
okay.
She just refuses to learn the language properly.
But yeah, so in this we go to chapter 4 where we catch up with how Lockwood and Co are doing in a London where Penelope Fitz has more power than ever.
Yay. The art is, of course, the kitchen table. You can see the tablecloth and the teacups and the mask that George is looking at throughout the chapter. And also a jar of jam, which is very obviously a Smucker's jar.
That's right, it is, yeah.
Which is like the worst jam. I don't believe that they would be eating Smucker's.
Do you think that, I wonder, do they have Smucker's in England? Is Smucker's like...
A, off the top of my head, I have no idea. And B, it might actually be different. That's fair.
Are Smucker's using, like, for their own credibility, a well-known English style thing that we just don't even know about?
I'm sure they are, or they've like adapted it. But like, look at that label with the jar lid. Like, that's Smucker's. Come on.
100%. Yeah.
When you looked up the artist, was she English or American?
English, lives in England, lives in London, I think. Yeah.
So probably does exist over there. I don't know if it's the worst jam. I can see where if you're doing art, especially that type of art, you would just choose something that is recognizably jam.
Yeah.
But still, it's the worst. That being said, other things that like we have here and there taste completely different here and there. So
I hear that a lot. I don't have experience with it. So
heck, things in America taste completely different than here that are the exact same thing. So
yeah,
it makes sense. Perhaps Smucker's is not the worst of the jams over there. We have talked about jam too much. All right, so we are back at Portland Row, and we get a little bit of like usually in the other books, after the opening sort of job action piece, we go back in time a bit and get caught up. But this one, we're staying caught up. So we just kind of get a little bit of a, we're back home and this is home.
Yeah, it kind of mirrors the construction of other books, like you're saying. Yeah, but it is more like we're not going back in time to be like, and this is what happened right after the events of the previous book. It's just like, here's how things are now.
Yeah. We do get a little bit peppered in of how things were for Lucy and Lockwood after having been to the land of the dead. Mm-hmm. But it's not like a full flashback to it. It's just, just took a long time. It affected us. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said before, this book is the most Lockwood and Co. book, so it does feel very of the same structure that the previous 4 books have had. But yeah, there's a momentum to it where we're not looking backwards too much. We don't need to. We're just like updating you on where, Lucy's back in the house, and it's all about like how she feels when she's coming into the home, and like, she knows by smell who's there, by sound, things like that. She's very familiar with this place now.
Yeah. And she says when they're all sitting at the table, she specifically says that she's enjoying the companionable silence.
Yeah.
Which just sort of speaks of being at home,
Right.
Anyways, and then Lockwood interrupts all the good feelings with bad news. And bad-ish news.
Like, George is like, yeah, I prefer my misery to come in stages so I can acclimatize. So give me the baddish news first.
I wonder what George would think of our current world situation.
Oh, man.
Would he be acclimatized?
He would be like, yeah, that's just normal. That's not even a big deal. You don't have to deal with zombies and stuff or whatever. Like, it's just politicians.
Yeah, I guess. And also, he's in England, so he'd be watching it all from afar, just shaking his head at America.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, they have their own problems.
Well, yeah, but yes. No but. That's what I mean. They're not involved the way, sadly, we are. Fun time.
Yeah, it's great. Well, I do think what's happening here is kind of related, though, because like the baddish news that we get is that Penelope Fitz is exerting her power and influence to gobble up more independent small agencies.
Yes.
Like Dollop and Tweed. I don't think we've ever heard of them before, but
Great
now
name.
They're gone. It is. It's really good. And you could like almost see the uniform from the name, I feel like.
Definitely like Giles tweed suits. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. They've been destroyed and absorbed by Penelope into the Fitz organization. And even Adam Bunchurch is getting pressured, and he's been very vocal. This is like it's kind of setting something up. And Lockwood and Co. is also getting pressured. We find out like quite a bit from regulators, and the mood of DPRAC is very different. And I feel like all of that is kind of related to the kind of stuff that's happening right now in the political world.
The rich people taking over and doing whatever they want.
Yep. Using the government as a tool to expand their business and power.
Yeah, it goes into how DPRAC used to regulate the agencies, but now basically the Fitz agency is regulating DPRAC and having them do whatever they want.
Yep.
Because she has a large monopoly.
And the bad news is that Julius Winkman has been pardoned from prison, which I think this is like the clear implication is that Penelope is behind that.
Yeah.
Which did kind of remind me of, again, in the current climate, all of the January 6th people being pardoned for their like
treason?
Assault on the Capitol. Yeah, their treason, literal treason.
I mean, yeah, but we're also watching your president and his,
lackeys.
I was going to say wife, but then I wasn't sure you'd know who I meant because I did mean Elon.
Yeah. Yeah, commit treason.
Commit treason every day.
Yeah.
And also declare an act of war on Canada just casually in their press conference. Call us the 51st state. Like, what?
It's crazy. So yeah.
Anyways,
I
I'm sorry.
feel like
I
it
won't
is
keep bringing
directly
this up.
related.
It's just kind of everywhere.
But it does show you how, like, I like we talk about, the story behind the fiction here, and like capitalism and
Yeah.
the CEOs and they're bad and the government and blah, blah, blah. But like this stuff is kind of real, like it is happening, and this is how these people operate. So I think Stroud is in tune with a certain way of thinking, that Winkman is a useful tool because the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yeah. He also acts as like the Act 1 gun
Exactly.
that
yeah.
you presume is going to go off in Act 3.
Right. Yeah.
Or 5, depending on what act structure you're following.
We really are setting up, a lot of stuff with all of these. Talking about the bad news is setting up stuff for later.
Yeah.
It's true.
But just Winkman in particular. Like if he just came out of nowhere later, you'd be like, oh, you got out of prison? But this way does sort of set that up nicely. And it makes you think, like it kind of makes you feel throughout the whole book, when is Winkman going to come back?
There is a tension to that.
Yeah.
And a general feeling that like there is no justice in this version of London.
Yep. Especially since shortly after that, Holly arrives. And I'm skipping over a different important bit, but just Holly arrives and says that she got cornered by... Oh, I'm skipping over quite a lot, aren't I?
Yeah, it is terrible, though. You're right. Yeah. The intimidation. And stuff.
That she got cornered by... I want to say the Golden Blade, but no. What's that man's name? It's right
Rupert
here.
Gale?
Rupert Gale. I must have been looking right at it, and my eyes just
Yeah.
refused to find it. And kind of intimidated by him. And she describes how he just got too close to her and smelled too strongly. And I can just picture that exact situation, and it, especially since she's young, and I hate everything about that.
Yeah.
But let's not skip over.
Would they have called him the Golden Gale eventually?
No, because in the book his sword is silver.
No, I meant in the show. They would
have. Because when they found out his name.
Yeah.
That would have been funny, actually, yeah.
Yeah, but we skipped some stuff.
George is polishing a mask. Right. And it turns out that mask came from one of the crates in Jessica's room. And that you can kind of glean that George has been George and probably Lockwood and Lucy have been going through all the crates to sort of catalog what's in there and find if anything's useful. And Lockwood is totally okay that George went in there by himself and got something out.
Yeah. I think he says it's even the last crate or something like that.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, he opened the last crate yesterday. Hope that's okay. And Lockwood just nods and says, fine. Anything else good so far?
So that, we're showing the progress, the emotional progress that Lockwood has, instead of telling us that everything's okay now and blah. Yeah.
And setting up that there's other useful things.
Psychic implements. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a good double meaning conversation there. Nice writing, Stroud. I'm sure my opinion matters.
He's a really good writer, though. Yeah, he is. And he's layering this whole thing in ways that he's foreshadowing, he's paying off emotional beats from previous books, and he's showing us like what normal life is like now.
I guess I'm trying to be nice because I was so mean last time. But I'm not just like trying to be nice. It's true. Anyways, then they're sort of talking about Marissa and Penelope, because that's the important thing that they got to figure out before they can like go forward with this information they have. They have to figure out why, how, what is her plan. Yeah. And they say something that really does, because they say that Marissa was the one who got all this ghost hunting started. And the way that, I think it's Lockwood who says it, does kind of imply that they already think that she started the problem. They just don't know how or have any proof about it.
Yeah, or like why, or... Yeah.
He doesn't say it blatantly. He just kind of says, she started this and we have to figure out why and all that type of stuff. And so I just like characters being smart in books. Because so often they're not.
And this is always the way that Lockwood operates, right? He like has an intuition about something being true. Yeah. And then he builds backwards from that.
Yes. Yeah. I feel like even in the show, that was my number one compliment, that the characters were never dumb. You never felt like the show was talking down to you. I really appreciate that. And I'm sure the children reading the books do also.
Yeah, that's always like more fun to read something that takes you seriously as a reader. Yeah. And to like try and figure out what's going on, Lockwood is like, why doesn't that stupid skull contribute, since it's the one that told us, there's this connection? And that brings Skull into the conversation, because we've been updated on every character who's in Lockwood and Co. except Skull at this point, in the domestic sense.
I actually kind of hate this, because literally a page ago it said that a beam of sunlight was shining directly
through
on the jar. Like, I'm all for a little bending of the rules for Skull, because, he's in his protected glass jar and blah, 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 blah. But beam of sunlight reflecting through the plasma is literally how it was described. And now he's like, I'm awake, I'm here. And it would be so easy to fix. Don't have that bit describing that a beam of sunlight was in the plasma. Or have that bit and then say, Lucy moved the jar over to some shade or something, what?
Yeah, it sounds like he's talking through a well, or he can't. The plasm tried to stir and I could almost hear something. Yeah, it just doesn't.
Exactly. Whatever. I guess it doesn't matter, except it bothers me.
The thing that Skull brings up, though, is that he wants to discuss being freed because they had a deal, he says.
I don't know if that's quite true, but
yeah.
Basically, he wants out, and he's sick of always giving them help and them not giving what he wants.
He gets nothing out of the deal, right?
Yeah.
Except being part of the team, I guess.
Yes, being part of having company, someone to talk to, which is why he does keep helping.
Yeah, but he seems to hate it, right? Like, he loves Lockwood falling down the stairs and Cubbins almost dying and all of this stuff.
Sure. If they were all dead, he would be miserable.
Yeah, then he would be like, oh, wait. I thought I would love this, but no.
Yeah.
It did make me think, I keep talking about his symbolic place as her inner darkness. The Skull's freedom is a big theme in this book, and an important idea. That's why Stroud is bringing it back up here at the beginning of the book, so that we're reminded about it. And I'm just trying to think this through the symbolic implications of that. Is this a part of growing up that, so much of Lucy's narrative voice is the repressed, when Inspector Barnes shows up, she's his face is a lived-in 50 with a dead hamster across his lip for his mustache, but she would never say that to his face, right? She has this entire, I don't know if dark's the right thing, but meanness inside of her that she doesn't express, she doesn't let out, and then she has a kind of resentment towards a lot of other people, especially women who are performing, I don't know, acceptability really well and being accepted. She has an anxiety about being accepted. And so I don't know, maybe letting Skull out of the jar symbolically is her kind of just being herself openly. And she's afraid that if she does that, and what if I'm not accepted? What if I'm not, going to be a part of the group still?
I can see that. I do think Skull as a symbol only goes so far, because he is also a character who has his own wants and needs.
Yeah. I think that's right. I think you can't interpret it too closely because this is a want and need that he has as a character, and it's a part of his arc as a character has to do with this freedom and being let out of the jar. I think that's right.
But there is something to what you were saying too. She is repressed, and you'd think a lot of at the beginning of this book feels like she's turned a corner with all that. Except that then she's still really mean to George in her head. And I do like the idea This is me being mean of her because she's writing these later, technically speaking, right?
Yeah.
And I just love the idea of George like looking over her shoulder and being like, "What the hell, man?"
She's like, I just have to put it out there. Honestly, this is what I thought.
Yeah.
You have a uniquely slappable face. I don't know how else to say it.
Right? Like, oh, that's good. But some of the stuff in this chapter was pretty mean. I didn't even note it all down because I was like, okay, we've talked about this enough. Lucy is particularly mean to George.
Yeah. Even a little bit with Holly, even though she's like, I like this about Holly, but she still is kind of fixated on...
She's still fixated on their differences, but she's just okay with them now.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. No bad things to say about Lockwood, of course.
Of course, yeah. He's always great. Skull is like, so what's the deal? Like, I did my part, you do your part. And she's like, well, I need time. We need to think about it. We'll talk about it later. And he's like, something else will come up. And then this is when Holly walks in.
Yeah, she says, nothing's going to come up. We're just sitting around. And then Holly comes in and it was
classic.
It was fun.
Yeah.
It was great. Classic Stroud writing.
And so George is worried about, she came back from Arif's, where are the donuts? And she's like, yeah, I have donuts, but also Rupert Gale was being a bully to me.
And then just after that is where we learn about what I was talking about with Deepak basically being taken over by Fitz. And then we go on about how they've been kind of harassing not just Lockwood and Co, but all the smaller agencies, but we see it all from Lockwood and Co.'s perspective, obviously. And how they get followed and blah, blah, blah. Oh, and Gail specifically wanted to know where they were last night. And they talk about how they have a lie prepared. And we just sort of learn about how they've had to prepare for all this. And
yeah, because the new law, and it kind of makes sense, is like the perfect kind of like fig leaf covering for a law where the regulation basically says if you're a smaller agency, you should be doing smaller jobs because you just don't have the resources to handle something big like the big agencies. And so the bigger, more expensive jobs go to the bigger, more expensive agencies, which all happen to be Fitz. How nice. And the smaller agencies get over-regulated and made sure that they have the lowest income jobs and therefore remain small and vulnerable. So like, that's like, the classic like neoliberal way of arranging markets by the government, right? Like where the government directly deals with like large corporations to be like, you carry out our contracts for us. And they're like, great. And so like, like a big corporation, like, I don't know, like Tesla, for example, or SpaceX will get like a huge government contract, but then a smaller company in the same market will never see any government money, and the big get bigger, the small stay small.
It also, there's something about it that to me reminds me of that time in 2001 where basically we all gave up our privacy for security.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's just something about that.
There's a lot of that in the problem world. I think that's right. Yeah. There's a lot of that. And you do see like there's literal physical intimidation. These guys aren't just regulators who are walking around with a clipboard watching them. Rupert Gale is up in her face, making her feel unsafe and like intimidating her in a way. Like Holly is not like a pushover, but he's like, where were you last night? And we know that they can do real damage, like lock them up, take away their business.
Yeah, because we just heard what they did to Tweed.
Right, yeah. So this is scary.
Yeah. Reminds me of Chicken Run because one of them is called Tweety. And I love Chicken Run.
Run is so good. Chicken Run is so good.
What a random thing to bring up. I just love it.
That's another workplace dystopian. It's really good.
I've always actually loved The Great Escape, the movie, so I love how much it actually does pulls from The Great Escape.
It's an adaptation of The Great Escape. I never put that together. That's so true.
But there's literal like scene for scene remakes in it.
No, you're right.
Tunnels.
You're right. That's funny.
Oh, it's so good. Anyways, a random sideline that maybe we'll cut out aside. Okay, so one thing I did want to bring up is that I love the sequence of events in these chapters of how they just finished breakfast and they were still hungry. So they sent Holly out for donuts. They eat the donuts. And then, of course, the client shows up and they have some cake.
Oh, right.
I love that for them, especially George. He seems to be having a grand old time.
He's like, we need to crack open those donuts. That'll really solve your anxiety, Holly.
Yeah. And Holly says she'll have an apple, but she does have a donut. And I'm proud of her too.
That's nice.
Yeah. But in the middle of all that, Lucy goes over how everyone is reacting, how everyone at Lockwood and Co. is reacting to all this. And everyone's sort of taking it the way you think that they would take it. Just that she has an aside about her and Lockwood here and how close they've grown and how... And this is where we learn that their journey through the land of the dead has like physically and kind of emotionally marked them, and how they were so weak for a while, how they'd been having nightmares, and how they've both got the white and or gray in their hair now.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's just like 2 paragraphs of her talking about how similar and on the same page they are and how much she loves him. And yeah.
I made a note of this too. I said, since this does not explicitly say that they are dating, they obviously have no feelings at all for each other. So that's how I took this.
Yeah, and then she does worry about whether or not their closeness comes from that shared experience or if it's just like them and that they're close and that they understand one another. And she specifically says, but he's not going to bring it up because he doesn't like talking about emotions, and I'm not going to bring it up because I find that difficult. So we're just going to... keep living our
just
lives.
Just live in this place, yeah.
And as somebody who gets annoyed at books when there's like problems between characters that could be solved in a 5-minute conversation, I actually kind of buy that.
At least she's acknowledging it instead of being
exactly.
There's no choice. This is just the way that things are. It does feel a little bit like how things could be like if they're not dating. I think that they are dating, just for the record.
I like to think that Lockwood thinks they are.
Yes.
Yeah, dating-ish. There we go.
Yeah. There's something more than like coworker friend happening here. But yeah, it hasn't been well defined. But what it feels like to me is like like it in your 20 somethings, or this is my experience anyway, having like a drunken makeout session with somebody that you're friends with, or like even a hookup or something, and then not talking about it afterwards or like unpacking anything about it. What did that mean to you? What does it mean to me? And just like existing after that.
Are you equating a drunken hookup to
being in the afterlife? Yeah, the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Like there was the whole afterlife, and there was only one cloak to hide in, and we're not going to acknowledge what that meant to us. That's the energy that we're getting from this.
It is the energy, except that they have to work together and live together too.
Yeah.
But it seems to be fine for now. Like, she's happy with the way things are. She just wants to talk about why and how, but doesn't know how.
Real growing up. You just got to learn how to have those conversations.
And she doesn't explicitly say they've never made out. So they obviously are making out off page.
All the time.
We just don't see it.
I think Stroud did talk about this a little bit, and he was like, they deserve their privacy. I'm not putting that stuff on the page, which is kind of sweet. I don't know.
I think I've also read somewhere that he didn't want to end the book with like a big kiss moment. Right? Like that just didn't feel right for his books or the characters. And that I absolutely buy. It
would be weird to end on that kind of note. I don't know. But their togetherness is an important part of who they are.
Yeah, I don't think it would be weird. I do think like a big, they finally kiss moment wouldn't have fit the book at all. At least at the end. If he decided to like put it throughout the book, that would have been fine. But I do think their relationship is like the second most important thing driving these books. Like the plot of the ghosts and stopping the problem and all that is obviously number one. But then I do think Lucy and Lockwood come second before Lucy and everyone else.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking this in part one. There's like a a part where it talks about them going down the stairs, and each one of them has their own little light. And it looks like she describes it as like a little caterpillar kind of going down the stairs.
Right, yep.
And it just made me think about like the way that Stroud writes relationships. He's really good at acknowledging that like these are not all like little individual heroes who are, you know, like stand on their own and like work together in some kind of, I don't know, there's like something typically American, like the Avengers or something like that, about that idea that they're very like interconnected, all of his characters, and that they strongly affect each other. They are a part of each other. They're not like, they are not who they are in the absence of each other. They need each other in really important ways. And so I think Lucy needs Lockwood, and a big part of this book is showing how much Lockwood needs Lucy, and how them being together is what makes it possible for them to win, to like,
yes,
you know,
yes,
come out in the end.
Them and Skull.
Them and Skull, yeah. Skull is a part of the team too. Yeah.
I do sort of think Skull, in a way, he's kind of the pet, you know? I don't want to say he's their child, because that's a bit
weird.
much, but the pet, you know? Lucy and Lockwood, what else is there to say? The chapter ends with the expected client knocking on the front door half an hour early and them kind of scrambling. And then in chapter 5, Mr. Tufnell hires Lockwood and Co. to destroy the ghost that is haunting his theater company. And before we get into it, I just want to say I really like this job with the ghost in the theater. I think it adds a lot to what we were just talking about, the Lucy and Lockwood and the team. But it has, somehow Stroud wrote it with like absolutely nothing to do with the overarching plot. And it does sort of feel out of place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I get that it
kind
fits
of
the structure of the books, right? Like, there's always an early job that feels not quite connected, or not always, but whatever. I don't know.
Well, at first, but then sometimes it like loops back in a really meaningful way.
Yeah, right. Like when they helped the book 3 mansion rich lady.
Yeah.
Right. Like that got them in on the float and and blah, blah, blah. It had connections. And that was a thing. And this one does not do any of that.
I think it has unfortunate connections that I will talk about later that I think are just like in the air with this book around beautiful women and power and like the implied connections there. But yeah, it doesn't feel in a plot way to be closely connected to the situation with Penelope and Marissa. Yeah.
And it's just an interesting choice that we take this like side quest kind of.
Yeah.
And I'm not against it. Like I said, there's really good character moments in this, and we eventually get Lucy on the trapeze, which is great and should be in a TV show one day.
Right.
Not that that's ever going to happen, but, you know.
I think people love, in the fandom, they love this case, and it's a fan favorite. But yeah, it doesn't feel deeply connected to the plot of this book.
Still, I don't disagree with that even, but it still does feel misplaced or something.
It's weird.
Or maybe it's supposed to feel that way because sometimes, the world's ending, but you still got to go to work.
Yeah. And this is the kind of thing that they're allowed to work on too.
Yes, that's true.
They're not doing mansions anymore. And
well, the art is the flyer that we see of the ghost when she was alive and doing shows, but the art style, of course, makes it look terrifying. Like I don't know what it is about the, like, it does not look right. I don't enjoy it.
I can't remember what time period she was actually
It was
from.
90 years ago, I believe.
Okay, so like
that she was killed.
World War I-ish.
Well, what time are these books happening at?
They were contemporary to when they were published, so like 2010s, 15s, yeah,
in there like somewhere. So
between World War I and World War II.
That makes sense, yeah, like 1930s.
Yeah,
this actually feels like Depression entertainment.
Yeah.
I have absolutely no idea how bad the Depression was in England.
It was bad everywhere, I think.
It was?
Wasn't it?
I don't know, man. Like, I know it was bad here, and I know it was bad in Germany.
Right.
Those are the two places I know it was bad. Because that's how we got World War II. Not the
I think it was
the
worse.
Germany bit.
Yeah, I think it was worse in Germany because they were paying reparations to everyone.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have this like vivid memory of a picture in my like history textbook of a German lady burning money because it was more useful as fuel,
like to keep warm.
Yeah.
This guy comes over. He's very excited about the cake on the table, and everybody is a little bit taken aback to see that he has brought a child along who is in chains. And
he's not a child. He's
not
like
bothered by that.
He's a young man.
I guess
He's like a teenager at least.
Yeah.
When you say child, I think 9.
That's fair. Yeah.
But I don't know why 9 specifically, but that's what I think.
Well,
Anyways,
what happened when you were 9, Caitlin?
I have no
that
memory
ended
of that.
your childhood.
I like to think my childhood ended at 11. Thank you very much.
Oh, okay.
That's when all my friends turned on me, and I.
Aw.
Anyways, no one needs to know Caitlin's childhood trauma. Where are we? Okay, Mr. Tufnell is the guy coming to hire them, and he showed up ridiculously early, and they all had to scramble to get the living room, or whatever they call it, presentable.
Mm-hmm,
And then he's kind of like, there's so many times when he's talking where I'm like, is he just kind of weird, or is he a jerk? But I do think he is just subtly a bit of a creep.
Yeah,
You know?
we've seen this exact structure. Once again, like this fits into like every other book pretty much. The first book's a little bit different, but like the other books have the same kind of thing, right? Where the client shows up, the adults are useless, they're offbeat and bizarre, and like this guy fits right in with that. He feels very like he's a theater guy to me. Like they're like, oh, who are you? And he's like, allow me to introduce myself and blah, blah, blah. And I won't take up your time. And then he talks for like 2 paragraphs uninterrupted in a pointless rambling way. So he just feels like that kind of like impresario kind of archetype to me.
Yeah, that's true. But like some of those sort of archetypes can be just fine. You know, like they seem like good people. And in a way, this guy does seem like a good person. He wants to keep this young man alive. You know, he wants to solve the problem before it happens again, or before this dude manages to kill himself, because apparently that's all he wants.
Yeah, so Charlie Budd is the
young man.
The guy who's chained up, yeah, and Tufnell claims that he will try to harm himself if he is not chained up.
Which is wild. And that he doesn't eat anymore. Who knows if he sleeps.
When I was rereading this, I was like, I wonder if this was the inspiration for the
ghost
stuff.
Touch?
Yeah, around Nori in the show.
I feel like there's been a couple of things that are kind of like that. But Nori doesn't want to kill herself. She's just empty.
Well, he says, they're like, why didn't you take him to the hospital or a doctor or something?
Yes.
And he's like, all they would do is put him in a coma for his own benefit. And I was like, I wonder if that's kind of what they were doing there.
I guess technically from the show, we don't have all the answers for that.
Yeah.
Anyways, Mr. Tufnell is very excited about the cake, which does kind of seem odd when he's holding this chained up dude. But, you know, whatever.
He just doesn't care. I think that's part of the reason why he feels slimy and weird, because he's like, he really wants to eat this whole cake by himself, and he's got a kid chained up. So it just feels weird. And
he does also kind of look Lucy and Holly up and down and be like, oh, you'd be great in my show. And, you know, put on some sequins and twinkly tassels. Twinkly tassels in appropriate places. Okay.
And then Lockwood's like, yes, George will keep that in mind. Thanks for the offer.
That is how you make a good kind of George is the butt of the joke.
Yeah,
that's great.
It's really good. Yeah, because he's putting that guy off.
Yeah. And then later on that page, he says about how busy he is and how he can't sit around all day munching cake, even if Lockwood and Co. can. And I'm like, way to be rude to the people who want to help you. And also, like, you've eaten more cake than them. What?
Yeah. It's great. I don't know. I just kept writing over and over, adults are useless through this whole thing. It's really good.
And like after he describes the first time they've seen the ghost, Lockwood asks what they did about it, and he says, nothing, we're not in the building after dark. And I'm like, could you not have put out some lavender, spilled some
Something.
salt somewhere? Like, I feel like that would be the first thing you did in an old building like that.
Yeah.
Things that wouldn't interrupt your business but would keep people safe.
And would look like to the customers, it'd be like, oh, great, they've, put iron around. I feel safe
Yeah, exactly.
being a customer
Exactly.
here. Yeah.
Iron, yeah. Put some iron bars up. Or especially in the back rooms where the customers wouldn't see anything.
Yeah.
Put iron underneath all the seats. I guess this costs a lot of money probably in that world. Iron is probably very
I'm sure.
expensive.
Yeah.
Is
more
iron expensive here? I have no idea. So it's just interesting how he does seem genuinely concerned about all of the people who've been affected and his employees and stuff, but also like he did nothing to help them.
Yeah, I like how Stroud kind of thinks this through too with his world building, because it's got to be tough for this guy to run an entertainment business that can't operate at night. Like, I'm sure his margins are tight. Other people have to go to work who aren't in the ghost business, and they do that in the daytime. So like, when would people have time to go to a theater, and who would they be? And like he says, almost all of his clientele is adults. And like the only children that he has there, like the reason that he knows about this is because there are kids who work to clean up, which again gets into the weird child labor exploitation laws of this version of London.
Yeah, because presumably they're in there at dusk when ghosts might show up. And presumably that's why he hired kids.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And they're like the canaries in the coal mine for this haunting, to be like, oh, we saw something. This is weird.
And that's when we get the name of the ghost. And I do like the joke of Holly saying they call the ghost that on account of its deadly feminine allure. And he's like, no, because it's her name.
That's her name. Didn't you know that?
Yeah. And then he pulls out the flyer saying that she was mistress of illusion. And
yeah. An escapologist.
Which I don't think is a word, but sure.
I don't know.
Sounds very circusy.
Yeah.
And basically she died in the worst way possible.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's very like, I was thinking like vaudeville, but there was no vaudeville in England, so.
Yeah, but that type of thing. Very, what's that guy's name? Oh my God. Houdini-esque.
Yeah.
But she was trapped in her, onstage coffin instead of going out the trap door, and was stabbed multiple times, presumably, with the swords that they put in there for the act. And the audience just thought it was the act, because she usually did scream, and make it theatrical.
Dramatic.
And they thought the blood pouring out was part of the act. If I was a kid reading this, I would never go to a circus ever again, just in case. That would plague me. I like it. I like that he's done this to the kids,
It's very funny. I don't know. I think it's kind of funny.
It's funny and terrible, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And it's before the problem, so it's like, oh, this tragic, weird, bizarre thing happened. And it's notorious in their troupe, of course. Like, it's part of their legendary history and everything. But yeah, he knows exactly who this is, even though she hasn't been haunting the company this whole time. It's only started happening in the last couple of weeks.
And then we get some stories about how she attacks or whatever, and that she lures young men to her, or men of all ages probably. Leaves the women alone, though. There have literally been women who have seen her from close up, and she's just left them alone. She only wants to hurt men. And you know what? I'm okay with it.
Yeah. Nice. He says, this really caught my attention. He says, she was a cruel woman in life, they say. Her looks gave her power over all who saw her, and that's the power her ghost has too. So she's like so attractive and beautiful that the men are kind of mesmerized by her and drawn to her. And then she enfolds them in an embrace that kills them, which is what happened to the other fellow who died.
Yeah. It feels like a new form of ghost luck, right? Like the ghost luck in the book, not in the show, is evolving to maybe be more driven by the personality of ghosts. Because we've known throughout the books that the problem is getting bigger or more problematic, more problem.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that this ghost luck, like other ones do, but seems to do it in a specific way.
Yeah, it's particular to her. We've seen things kind of like that. Like in the first book, Lucy wants to throw herself down the well because that's what the monks did.
That's true. That's true.
In Coombe Carey, yeah. And I remember too, when they meet Flo Bones, she feels the overwhelming depression of the woman who drowned herself and her baby in the Thames. But
that's
I'm
just
picking,
Lucy, right?
Yeah,
like Lucy is
exactly.
very empathetic with the ghosts,
right?
And when she connects with them like that, she can get herself into them almost, or them into her.
Right. She's feeling what they're feeling. And this is different because she's like exerting a force on these men that has nothing to do with like what she's feeling. She's like luring them to her in some way. Yeah. You know, part of the reason why I bring this up is because Penelope is always described in these very like glamorous, beautiful, like this is part of why I feel like Penelope is Penelope and she's not. You know, like she changed into a different body to recapture some of the beauty and elegance of a younger woman. And she wields that as a power over, you know, men in particular, maybe. But like her beauty and her cruelty are interlocked in a way that is the same with this ghost. And I don't know if that's like, you know, a symbolic theme that we're hitting on, or that's just like
that just feels like
mood in these books.
I guess, but it also just feels like a stereotype.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
It feels kind of lazy to me, honestly.
Right. Because we don't interrogate it and be like, you can be beautiful without cruelty, or you can be cruel. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, yeah, of course. This is how, beauty and cruelty
not part
is
of
femininity.
I don't feel like it's part of the plot or even part of Penelope's / Marissa's story at all. It's just like I get the parallel you're drawing, but I don't think Strahd is saying anything with it other than he's writing women who are evil and beautiful.
Right, which is like a trope that's been around for a very long time. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's problematic in this book is kind of what I'm saying. And the fact that it's happening with Penelope while it connects her to La Belle Dame, it's not like, I don't think it's like an intentional bridge between these stories. It's something that bothers me when I read the book.
Yeah. There's also this weird bit where they're asking, like, did these two boys have anything in common? Right? Like, just trying to do some research. And apparently they were both a little lovelorn, I think. Mm-hmm. Or at least Charlie was. I forget about the other dude. The one who died. But apparently Charlie had Sid.
Yeah, that's his name. I was flipping through trying to find it too.
Or maybe it was Sid who was
Morrison.
lovelorn. Which one of them was lovelorn? Oh, yeah. It's okay. So Sid was lovelorn. He had a thing for one of the girls, and she did not reciprocate. And the dude, Mr. Tufnell, tried to get the girl to just go along with it.
Yeah. For the good of the company.
For the good of the company. Yeah. And this is where I ultimately decided, oh, no, this guy is a big creep.
Yeah, he definitely is. The way that he eyes up Holly and Lucy, and this is bad.
But I will say, like, until here, I thought maybe the eyeing up of Holly and Lucy could have been strictly professional, you know?
Sure, yeah.
But no, dude's crazy. Or creepy.
And I think it's like, it's self-consciously, you know, like to step out of the story. Strahd is making him creepy. You're not supposed to be yeah. He's a bad guy. 100%. And I think that's how you're supposed to feel about him. Yeah.
I don't even know if you're like, it's very similar to the old lady from book 3, whose name I'm never going to remember.
Winter Garden.
Oh yeah, Winter Garden, because it was like Winterbottom, but it wasn't Winterbottom.
I almost said Winterbottom.
You're right. Winter Garden, because she was genuinely a bad person, but you could also tell that she had real remorse about it, about like what had happened, and she really didn't want these children to die, but still didn't make
like,
different choices. Yeah.
Someone's got to polish the furniture. I don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do like that he gives these creepy, sometimes really not good people, adults, some layers.
Yeah.
You know, some interest to them. And they're not 100% evil. They're just kind of self-absorbed.
Yeah, I think that's right. And they're hiding their guilt from themselves by being like, well, what choice do I have?
It's just Mr. Tufnell is, making sure Charlie stays alive here. And I'm sure that is making him think he's a really great dude.
Oh my God. The self-congratulatory way. Because he compares Sid and Charlie, for the benefit of the question that they're asking him. And he's like, I'm a really, nice guy because Charlie has, like problems with his respiratory system. And I'm not the kind of guy who just like leaves a handicapped person out with no work to do. I give him a lot of work. I work him hard, actually, so that he can earn money. Because I'm generous like that. And I was just like, wow, what a shitty person you are.
That's the most boomer thing I've ever heard.
I know.
Wow.
The Sid guy was the up close magic kind of like card trick powder.
Yeah, he would
with the
walk
crowd
around
guy.
the crowd outside, kind of loosen them up, probably make them want to spend money,
Amaze you a little bit and be like, well, if you like that, come in the tent.
Yeah.
And see the big show. Yeah, and he had a yen for one of the women, and she wasn't into it.
Carol Blears, the Russian.
Right, the Russian.
I do love that they point that out. They're like, she doesn't sound very Russian.
Just this whole troupe just has like an air of like not that sophisticated. I think that's why the Merci in the name really works for me, like as a joke. I think it's very on purpose.
It's probably this dude and a bunch of like people under 25.
Right.
Who have nowhere for, who are just trying to make some money before moving on to better things.
There is this like funny, this might be my joke. I don't know. So like Charlie is going to get killed by the ghost, and this girl sees that this is going to happen to him, and she tackles him to save his life, but he is already ghost locked apparently. So while he didn't physically die from being embraced by the ghost and ghost touched, mentally he's been savaged in some way. And he says, Sarah's a strapping lass like you, not willowy and pliant like this other young lady over here. He flashed his broken teeth at Holly. It's just like the most like backhanded bad compliment. I don't know. I think this is funny. This is good writing on Stroud's part, but it makes him more of he's like clearly a jerk.
And I don't know. I just don't like older men smiling at young women. And I know Holly is older than Lucy. I think she's 19. So technically, I guess she's an adult. So I don't want to say smiling at a child. And it's just weird. I'm not trying to say even in a sexual way, but old men just love smiling at young girls, and I don't like it.
It sucks.
But like sometimes it's not even creepy, like I said, in a sexual way. It's more like they just think young girls are like children or something. I don't know. I cannot explain if you've never had it happen to you. I hate it.
I have not.
Because you weren't a young girl.
Old man.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't even, I think because of my age, even women in their 20s, I don't even fully see them as adults. I don't know. I don't even, like, they're just.
So I used to volunteer with like teenage women, and just whenever we would take them out, there would always just be weirdos. You know, and I didn't notice it when I was that age, but when you're an adult taking teenagers, or, out to see things, or like we went on a trip to Paris and London, and we would go take them downtown and do things there and blah, 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 blah. It's always the old men who are weirdos in multiple different ways is what I'm saying. Like, sometimes it's that creepy, like, no, please don't ever look at a girl again in your life. And sometimes it's just, why are you talking to them? Why?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, I would never talk to a girl in her 20s if there wasn't like some reason for me to, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
there's no reason for me to strike up a conversation with someone so much younger than me because we have nothing in common. So like, I can't imagine, like leering at it. It's just like, you're just a bad person. I don't understand.
It's very strange, and I will never understand it. And I want to make clear, I'm not saying, like, I have friends who have teenage children, and I love talking with them. They're great, but I know them, I've watched them grow up.
Mm-hmm.
I know who their friends are. I ask them about their life, and that type of thing I think is important for people. Like, you have your own kids, obviously, so you don't have to try.
Yeah, I have 2 daughters. I talk to their friends when they come over and
But
stuff.
also you talk to your daughters, presumably.
To my daughters, yeah.
I don't have children, so talking to my friends' kids is sort of how I do think it's important for people our age to know what's going on with young people and to not, like, isolate ourselves from them. But there's
a
way to do it that's not weird.
This guy's a weirdo, and I think he's coded to be a weirdo. You're not supposed to feel good about him or like working with him. But like, what choice this is how all the adults are. They come off. He does a great job with that of like, we need the adults for the work, but they're all like weird and broken and like they are condescending. They seem to all be compensating for their inability to cope with the problem.
And I feel like almost all of the older people who have hired Lockwood and Co throughout the books for these like one-off jobs, or not always one-off, but you know what I'm saying. They all were alive before the problem started.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So like, not just adults, because the problem started 50 years ago. So we could have like a 30 and 40-year-old adult who spent their whole lives in the problem. But because that they had parts of their lives before the problem and when the problem was probably not as widespread and they saw all this happen, they just have this weird distrust of it. Or like they don't take it seriously. And then people die.
Yeah, exactly. Because they're like, why do you wait? Like, it's been weeks that this is going on. Why didn't you do anything? And he's like, well, I didn't want to, the customers wouldn't come to see the show if they knew that the place was haunted.
Yeah. And like we said, why wasn't lavender and salt everywhere? Like, even if iron is expensive, I'm sure salt is not. Why?
Right.
All these things.
And I think it is a part of what you're saying, that a part of his psychology is just in denial because he grew up at a time when this wasn't a thing. And so he, in some way, he's able to retreat into that belief and be like, well, they say they see something, but it's more convenient for me to believe that it's not happening. And he does seem to have genuine remorse about Sid's death and about protecting Charlie and wanting Lockwood and Co, once they accept the deal, to be like, please don't take too long researching because I don't know how much longer Charlie is going to last.
Yeah. And so then they agree to be at the place in 24 hours, basically. And then Lucy goes to show Mr. Tufnell and Charlie out. And Charlie tries to kill himself with one of their rapiers on the way out.
Yeah, it's very creepy.
It's creepy and it's like startling. Like, there's this startling burst of violence. And then they all just have to go on with what they were doing afterwards. Like, they get him under control and Mr. Tufnell just continues to leave and walk down the street with this kid.
Charlie's also like, he doesn't yell. He doesn't say anything. Yeah, he just tries to stab himself. It's very scary.
It's very unsettling. I
think there's also like, and I do think this is kind of intentional, like a kind of foreshadowing of the idea of Lockwood's death wish, which is kind of like
Yes.
mixed in with this whole thing that's going on with Charlie, this self-harm, kind of theme that we're introduced to here.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. That I like better than what you brought up about the ghost and Penelope.
Yeah, I really don't think that that's intentional. That's why I don't like it, because it feels very like I said, tropey.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think the self-harm bit is related to, it foreshadows what we're going to get from Lockwood. And I think it kind of also underlines what I was saying earlier about how Lockwood and Lucy need each other. And like, this boy is very isolated from everyone else in his community. He's very alone. And I think that's part of why he is so vulnerable to this self-harm impulse.
Yes.
Compared to Lockwood. Yeah.
Yes. Agreed.
But that brings us to the end of this show.
And we managed to talk for over an hour about 2 chapters, which was probably mostly tangents. Go us. Best joke?
It's clearly joke? the Smucker's jar.
Mine was when he says about the sequins, and then Lockwood says, George will bear it in mind. That one genuinely made me like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Chuckle.
Yeah. It's good. I think it's what I said. It's just him calling her a strapping lass.
Oh. I hated that one.
I don't like
joke. Well, it's not the worst joke. The worst joke has got to be one of the things said about George, but we can't say that every week. I'm so sorry.
It's just like, it just underlines what a creep he is.
Right. Gotcha.
That's what I like about it. I'm just like, wow, you really put that in that guy's mouth. Amazing.
And I think most punk rock this week's got to go to Bunchurch.
Nice.
For not giving
Adam
in.
Bunchurch is never going to have this win again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for not giving in and becoming part of Fitz, standing their ground. They're them and Lockwood and Co. here at the end.
Poor Adam Bunchurch. Hiding behind a fort of potato sacks.
I picture in my mind, like, in a couple years, him saying, it was just me and Lockwood and Co. that didn't give in to that evil woman.
Really, I paved the way for them.
Yeah.
They would have made it without me.
Exactly. That's funny. All right, well, I think that is the show for this week. If you have any opinions on all of our strange tangents, you can reach out to us on Twitter at Lockwood Podcast. Alan will check Twitter. I probably will not. I still have it on my phone, but it just makes me upset.
It sucks. I am on there, though, and I do, like, every once in a while, you people out there will probably get a like from the show.
You people. You can follow me on Blue Sky, though, which, to be fair, with Blue Sky, I do refuse to call it skeeted or skeets or whatever the fuck somebody's trying to make happen there. Ooh,
is that what they call their posts or whatever?
I don't know if the company calls it that officially, but people are trying to make it happen.
Ugh,
and I hate like that. Sometimes I just say, I just call it a tweet because why not? Or most people say post.
That sucks. I don't like that word.
I hate it. Anyways, you can follow me on there. Inferior Caitlin.
You can send your emails to us. Your emails to us at contact@hologroundmedia.com, or you can go to the website hologroundmedia.com and scroll down to the contact form at the bottom of the page.
And remember to always have 2 rounds of dessert after breakfast. That sounds judgy. I mean it. Donuts and cake after breakfast every day.